All right, we're here at the Mind Pump headquarters. I'm here with my boy, Jordan Shallow. So what we were gonna do right now is we're gonna go over a 5-part series on hip health. And this is probably, I don't know, this is arguably probably one of the most important things that people don't address, I feel.
Sure, yeah. I mean, it's so often overlooked, especially for those guys doing heavy squats, heavy deadlifts. It's just people forget about it entirely.
So where do you think is a good place for us to start? What's one of the first things that you teach somebody that you want to address as far as keeping good hip health?
Most overlooked area, adductors. It's just really misunderstood. Other than anything outside of like the good girl machine, people don't really know much about the adductors and how they work and how they function at the hip. So we'll start today with addressing the low adductors. So people need to understand that there's low and high, right? So they all insert into like sort of the base of the pelvis, but they act on different lengths. So
when we're talking about this, so you have your muscles on the outside, on the inside that are going on. And typically when I think, like you said, like abductors, adductors, I think just, you know, bad girl, good girl machines, and that's it. But we're talking about now we're going to be targeting a specific area of the abductors.
Yeah, so I mean, the muscle group is just designated by action, but we got to think that these muscles are acting on a ball and socket joint. So your hip has freedom of movement in all planes of motion. You can flex and extend, internally rotate, externally rotate, abduct, adduct. But because it's working on this triaxial sort of ball and socket, those adductors don't just adduct. They always have a secondary and sometimes tertiary function, right? So the low adductors act more as extenders in their secondary action, where the high adductors act more as flexors. So when we address the low adductors, we need to not consider the position of the hip just in adduction and abduction, but also flexion and extension.
Which, what I think, why this is so important, why you picked this, you know, what happens to us is we tend to
very linear.
Moving these planes, but we know the hips are responsible for so much more than that. So addressing them in different planes is super crucial to keeping good hip health.
Absolutely.
So let's see the first.
Okay, so easy. What we'll do, start roller on the ground, and you're gonna sort of adopt this like Spider-Man position where this hip is now flexed, externally rotated, and abducted.
So you're putting the hip in a different plane here, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So what we're gonna do now is kind of start right below the VMO. That's where those adductors are gonna cross. So you actually do have one that crosses the joint at the knee. Now from here, try and load as much body weight on as you can. We're gonna get that foot off the ground, go through full knee flexion and extension, just kind of rock back and forth, and then roll a little bit. That's a problem with the roller. The roller should stay stationary through the movement. This is nothing. Okay. This is just, you're making pizza dough at this point.
So really what you're doing is you're keeping tension on that point while you're taking this muscle through full range of motion.
Exactly.
Extension and flexion.
And then, you know, roll a little bit further down, flex, and extend.
Now, do you recommend, you know, the repetitions? Obviously, if you feel discomfort, it's probably
it tells you where to shoot, sort of thing. I like to go, whenever you find one of those points, 3 full rounds of flexion and extension. So flex, extend, 1, flex, extend, 2, flex, extend, 3, and then move down the line.
And do you find like prepping or priming yourself before you go into lifts? This, I would assume, is extremely crucial if you're deadlifting, squatting.
Yes, I mean, especially depends on how you deadlift, how you squat. Right, narrower stance, less relative abduction at the hip. We're not too worried about addressing the adductors as much. Now this is more of a uniplanar movement, right? It's more flexion extension. As a power lifter, you know, if you're pulling with a convention or a sumo deadlift, or if you're a low bar squatter, now we're in more abduction of the hip. Now the adductors need to stabilize with that opposing force vector at the hip, right? We're pulling a lot here. We need to be stable through here. So for guys that squat wider, pull sumo, I always address this first. Narrower stance people, maybe not so much, but always something to kind of keep in the back of your mind.
Nice, love that. Hey, make sure you guys click, like, share, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Every day we drop a new video. And if you guys go at the end of this video, you guys will see a link up in the top right-hand corner. You guys can click on that for our 30 days of free coaching. Check it out.